So I think what chews people and spits them out in our concept is, if the amount of work that goes into a tight window, and if you're not willing to put it in, there's no margin there to make any money.
This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith.
I'm Joe Baker. We're not here to be the superhero. We just want to be your sidekick and help you along in building your business. Let's help you grow it fast and really scale.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and visit us at superherosidekick.com.
Hey guys, I'm excited to talk with you again. We got Jeremy in our studio again. And one of the things I'd like to talk to today is about how to scale a business. And one thing that I've learned is that, if you have, let's say you're making automobiles and you have a factory that can do 100 automobiles a day, you want that factory to do exactly 100 automobiles a day. And then, because if it does any more than that, then really you're becoming very inefficient. You end up borrowing, the neighbor's garage and you're moving people around. Or if you're doing less than that, that's inefficient too. You want to do exactly 100. And so if you want to scale, you have to build a bigger factory. You have to go from 100 to, let's say, 300. You have to build that bigger factory. And then as fast as you can, you want to go from 100 to 300.
Or build another factory the same size.
Yeah. Or build another factory the same size and go from, then you're doing 200 a day. But a lot of times you'll think that they can just grow and they can keep growing like incrementally, let's do 100, 101, 102, 103. And that's actually a very inefficient way of growing when you're building out your infrastructure and all of that. And I'm curious, Jeremy, what did you discover as you were, you think about you got this massive pizza factory. What was that like? What numbers, at what different points did you find those thresholds where it was like, okay, well, we really need the bigger factory. We need the more infrastructure to take that next jump. What were some of those?
Yeah. I think, for us, it's less of the factory piece, but to your point, it's more of the infrastructure piece. And so for us, the return on investment in terms of an increased infrastructure, which for us really is like a district manager. And so for us, that number, depending on geographics of that area that we're, have stores in, is anywhere from 6 to 10. And so to your point, Joe, if we go into a market like, Dallas, Texas, or Lubbock, Austin, whatever, and go in there with one store, for us, it's how quick can we get to 6, right? Or 10.
Because one is inefficient. And then there's probably another inefficiency when you get to 7 or 11 or whatever that is. At the same time.
Exactly. Yep. As soon as you get past that initial threshold, now you're the worst part is, let's say that sweet spot is 6, right, in that market, and you get to 7, to your point, now you're inefficient. Now I'm burning out my district manager because it's too many, but yet 7's not enough to have 2 district managers, right? So it's how quickly can I get to 12, right, stores, where now I got a second district manager, so to speak. So that's the model we use in that. And that can that's where we get, I would say, probably more attracted to acquisitions. So when you have those pocket of stores that are already there, because to that previous point, I can get to that number instantly, right? If there's 15 stores in that market or whatever it is, and buy that whole market.
And they might even have some leadership in place already too, right?
Yeah, even better, right? So versus building, one store at 3 months, and it taking years to get to that 12 mark.
I think there's another threshold too, just from a marketing perspective too, just getting up to a critical mass to be able to spend money on media, on marketing to be able to take you to that next level. It's really tough kind of on a grassroots level for 1 or 2 or 3 Papa Murphys in an area to really get that traction without being able to afford, the kind of media that can take you to that next level. And it takes several stores to kind of pool into one pot to spend that money that takes a little while to get to, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. And I think, and Joel, this from your market, but, I think the other challenges with our concept is we do about 4 hours of business a day, right? There's no one coming in for, raw pizza for, breakfast or lunch, right? So, we have that 3 to 7 window, call it. And so it's a real niche in a market. So then also when you get to that, 5, 6, 7 store mark or more in a market, you start coming to inefficiencies, Joe, of cannibalization, right? Because we're not pulling from as big a pool as a normal concept because of our niche. And so it becomes a challenge of, how many is too many to be efficient, to where you actually end up making yourself inefficient because you cannibalize yourself, by how many you've built to fish in that pond.
And how many miles apart do they need to be from each other?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So you're just creating these competitors within your market.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, like we kind of see Starbucks doing that. Like they kind of just saturate a market, and they somehow don't care what, if any of the stores are actually making money. I think because they're right on top of each other.
Yeah. Especially where I live here in the Northwest.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Starbucks and a lot of Papa Murphy's in the Northwest, no doubt.
There's intersections up here where there's literally, I mean, you can look it up. There's literally a Starbucks on all four corners of the intersection.
Oh, wow.
So when you're going into a market, you're going to launch 6 stores. Do you borrow capital to do that, or bring in investors, or is it just use your own capital?
Early days, absolutely borrowed. And it's been less as we've been, been more blessed or more successful. But yeah, we used a traditional model of lending in the earlier years, and then now we've, been able to build enough success to use our own coffers, so to speak, to develop.
So if it was pure just a dollar investment, what kind of an ROI do you get on like a $1 million investment of into Papa Murphy's, something like that?
Yeah, in the Northwest, where the brand's been established for 30 years and it has a ton of media, and every other commercial is a Papa Murphy's commercial, that type of thing. You're in that 10 to 15% range, which is healthy, which is good. The further east you move, where the brand's been around a lot less than that, and the saturation and the brand awareness isn't there, it can be, you can have stores that pop and get you into that 10%, range. But there's, we have several stores that do not make money. Due to
is there a downside? Like, what is the percent downside on a bad store?
I mean, your $1 million turning into 2 million because it's, lost money every month that you've, had it in that 5 or 10 year lease. So, yeah, that's absolutely the downside, and it happens.
We opened up 2 stores inside of Walmart years ago. And we lost about $500,000 off that, and we were able to close them up after 3 or 4 years, but lost a lot of money off that. So there's a lot of downside for making dumb, but we learned from that, and we haven't made those dumb mistakes since.
Yeah.
Wow. So you typically lease a store, right? You're not buying real estate like McDonald's. You're
we've got probably 10 8 or 10 properties that we own, and so we lease the space to ourselves, so to speak. But 90% of our locations are traditional leases, because the formula that's worked for this concept and this brand over the 30 plus years has been kind of going back, what I talked about in the previous episode, but where dinner decisions are made, right? And a lot of those decisions are made, in grocery stores, right? And so our traditional model of a store is in a strip center with an anchor of a grocery store. And so owning one of those properties is not real feasible, and hasn't been feasible. And so the ones that we own are, a freestanding, 1,500 square foot building on a drive home pattern, so to speak, where we had an opportunity to buy the actual property.
Yeah, if you don't have that anchor that you're next to, then and if you do have your own property or your own building, then it's pretty important that you're on the right street with the right traffic counts on it and the right demographics around it to kind of make up for that.
And cities move too, so it's like where you want to be this year is going to be different in like 5 or 10 years, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So how long of a lease do you sign?
5 years.
Okay.
Rarely will I ever sign a 10-year lease. Mostly 5 years with, try and get as many, 2 or 3 5-year additional options in there as well at the time of signing. But yeah, 5 years.
Okay. Is that, I mean, is that a big part of the success, is just learning how to do that and getting those right? I assume
Yeah.
when you think about the Walmart
Yeah.
situation you were saying.
Yeah. It's there's definitely some trial and error in there. I guess I would say, again, we've like we talked about before, there's a lot of pros and cons to a franchise, and this would be one of the pros. You're not going in as blind as you were if you were to, open up your own, Joe's Pizza Shop. A brand like Pop Murphy's has, support and resources to help you with location. I mean, ultimately they approve it too. They're also not going to let you open up a location in the middle of nowhere type thing either. But so number one, finding that location, and then number two, helping you with that lease. Not letting some I keep using the pest control example, but some pest control guy sign a 20-year lease because he looks at it and sees that the rate's obviously way cheaper. But the amount of lease liability he just committed his life savings to is, unreasonable. And so they'll come in and help, establish those leases.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a part of the, major point in like making this successful.
And one of the advantages of the franchise is, well, like Jeremy was saying, you get help from the company for sure, but then also you just have a recipe. You have a literal recipe to use, whether it be, for the product itself or finding locations. And like we know we have a pretty good, like Jeremy and I, because we've been doing this for a long time, we have a pretty good idea what kind of demographics is going to work. What kind of building, where it needs to be, and all of that. There's science behind it. There's just math and numbers, and there's tendencies. You can do your homework and you can find those things out, and it takes a lot of the mystery out of opening up a restaurant, for instance. And I think that I think there's a lot of franchisees or restaurant owners that go into this business thinking, well, how hard can it get? Or how hard can it be? And they find out that it's a lot more difficult than what they thought, because they didn't really know some of the ins and outs. Jeremy, what would you say about that? What have you seen as far as maybe some people that shouldn't be in the restaurant industry that were for a time and got out? And what do you see with that?
Yeah, I think I think what I would say is it gets exaggerated in our concept. And just going back to what I said about, the reality is we're really only doing 4 hours of business a day, if you think about it. And so because of that, our margins are tight, right? Our overhead's low, right? We don't have ovens, we don't have delivery drivers, we're not open until 2 a.m. Great friendly, hours, that type of thing. But you have a small window to make your money. And so your margins are tight. And, because of our concept and the fact that we do everything from scratch. I mean, we literally mix our own dough in the store every morning, grate our own cheese, chop our own vegetables. It's not coming in on a truck already in a crust form. I mean, it's a multi-day process. And so you spend a ton of time prepping for that 4 hours of business. And so I think, the amount of work that goes into a quick service restaurant is a bit exaggerated in our concept because of that tight window. And so I think what chews people and spits them out in our concept is, if the amount of work that goes into a tight window, and if you're not willing to put it in, there's no margin there to make any money.
Yeah. And even if you are willing to put it in, but you just don't have the skill to be fast and efficient and productive and be able to have, time goals and benchmarking and be able to organize yourself in a way that you can be productive and do that. Not everybody can do that. So everybody has a different production clock in their head. And some people find out the hard way.
Yeah. And going back to what Joe said about using the car factory, example, we really have that every day in that 4 hour window. And so if we don't have, all of the product, right, and the efficiencies inside that window, we lose money.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's just that simple, right? So you got to be firing on all cylinders 7 days a week inside that window to make any money at it, which becomes even more challenging when you're scaling and you're at that many stores. And I can't be in 90 plus stores, every day from 3 to 7.
So how many pizzas can a Papa Murphy's make per day and be efficient? Like, where does it become inefficient to do more?
So
700,
inefficient to do
800
more.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any more than that,
Yeah.
it's tough, especially if you're not used to it. Like some of Jeremy's stores in the Northwest would be, can do that fairly regularly. Our stores do that once in a while on the big events, maybe, or we used to. So we're pushed a little bit harder, but it kind of depends on the store. But I know Jeremy's got some pretty busy stores up there.
Yeah. So it's a interesting time to bring that question up, Joe, because I have on next week on Monday, I have a robot being installed in one of my stores in Seattle.
Oh, wow. Rad.
Try and answer that very question that you just asked. So
It'll burn out.
Don't burn out, and it'll do just under 100 pizzas an hour.
Wow.
But it doesn't, and this is very, 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 very early. Yeah, so we got to feed it the crust, but all the toppings are there, and it makes the pizza all the way until before it has to be wrapped still by, a non-robot. So super early in the stages, but it's honestly, I'm doing it and I'm partnering with the brand to do it to try and answer that very question, right? I mean, what is the point of no return on it? So we'll find out.
But even that will have a limit. But where you get that,
yeah.
hit that, actually, that's even a more obvious limit because that'll have a very set, speed.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Joe, we got to take a trip up to see the robot, maybe.
Yeah, you guys can. You can check out their website. We have the company is called Picnic, spelled the traditional way.
I got to find the robot to like discipline my kids. That's what I need.
Yeah, I hear you on that one.
Fair enough. Well, hey, Jeremy, do you have any other thoughts? Any last thoughts on maybe scaling? Anything else that you would any advice you would give on somebody that's maybe got 2 or 3 stores and they want to have 50?
Yeah. Number one, I would say that the most beneficial method to do so from just a logistical side of it would be through acquisitions versus building them. Lot less expensive to do so, especially in the long run, and a lot more known, right? You have a better chance at knowing what you're getting versus the unknown of opening a store and knowing whether it's the right location and all those things.
Well, and teaching your customers too. Yeah. Starting in a fresh place is tough to get the ball rolling.
It's a challenge, and obviously the supply chain, last few years and in this world has been a challenge and made things even more expensive as well. So first and foremost, I would encourage people to try and make that happen through acquisition. And then secondly, I mean, there's no point in even looking at that if you don't have people that are, I like to say, cut from the same cloth as you. There's no way we could have done what we have done if we didn't have the people that we do. And it's twofold. Number one, it's the work ethic piece for sure. But number two, it's the ability for someone to do or handle things the way you would do or handle them, right? Which really only comes from the amount of time they spend with you. But there's things that go on in my stores every single day that, I have no idea about. And I 10, 15 years ago could not fathom not knowing anything about. But you learn to trust, these people who are cut from that same cloth or have spent those years from you. And that's how we do it. I mean, it's every day I deal with things of, what are you guys doing about that incident that just took place in, that store in Austin, Texas? And I don't even know what you're talking about. Right. I mean, you get to a point of scalability to where you really got to trust people. But it takes those people that you trust to be able to scale from, 5 stores to 50.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's a good note to end on. I think you're right. The leadership aspect of that, just building trust and having the right people and building into the right people and developing them. That's the key. And that's the glue. I think that without that, it's really hard to really grow. The bigger you grow without that, the more it's just going to crumble. Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Well, hey, thanks, Jeremy. We appreciate your time.
But
If anybody wants to know anything more about your pizza shops, is there any place they could check out on the internet?
yeah, I mean, I think I'm on the traditional platforms, but LinkedIn's a pretty good one when we're talking about topics like this. So I think anyone can find me there with my name search and a Pop Murphy search. But yeah, more than love talking about it. So more than willing to answer questions people may have or talk more people who are interested in it.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.